2, 3. Welcome to She Rocked It. This is the place where ladies are talking about the ways we're blazing our trails and the things that put the wind in our sails. Hello and welcome to the She Rocked It podcast. I'm your host, Karen Gross. So happy to be back with another episode of our Real Talk with Women in the Music Industry series. This is kind of a bonus episode because I had this conversation with Cheryl Pawelski on Instagram Live and realized that we had to share it here on the podcast because Cheryl is a woman in the music industry that you need to know about. If you don't know her name, well, I highly suggest that you go check out her website and dig into her incredible background. We're going to include some info in the show notes as well. But in brief, Cheryl Pawelski is a 3-time Grammy award-winning producer. She's an archivist. She has preserved and championed some of music's most incredible legacies. And if you look at a snapshot of her Grammy wins and nominations, you'll get a sense of this. She's won for projects with Wilco and Mr. Rogers as well. So she's worked with an array of incredible artists throughout her career. Aretha Franklin, we're going to talk about a great moment that she shared with her and also with Robbie Robertson of the band. And also you'll hear in this conversation how Cheryl transitioned in her career from working at major labels to co-founding Omnivore Recordings, where she's really found an incredible home for herself to develop a multi-pronged career as a creative in the music industry. And there's a lot of inspiration we can all gain about blazing our own trails and finding our calling. So without further ado, here's Cheryl Pawelski and how she rocks it.
Thank you. That was a nice intro. Thanks for having me.
Oh, truly my pleasure. Shout out to Gregg Bendian, rockstar himself, for connecting us. We really appreciate this connection and his support of She Rocked It. But let's dive right in. So Cheryl, tell us a little more about yourself and from your own words and what you're up to these days.
Well, I'm a producer of catalog or historical recordings. So, what am I up to? It's a weird job to begin with, right? Because who knew that it even existed?
Right? I'll be honest with you. I didn't before I started researching you. How cool. You found this really amazing lane.
Yeah. And, there's no real pathway to that. So it's one of those jobs that you kind of make up. Right. But I was fortunate to come up at a certain time when all the labels, with the introduction of the CD, all the labels were able to kind of revisit their catalog.
That kids?
Yeah, the CDs. They went from big black discs to shiny little silver ones, and now they're ones and zeros on your computer. But currently it's just I'm working on Omnivore projects. I always got between probably 50 and 100 projects in various states of completion and clearance. You have to go through and do all the legal rights to these things. There's projects that I consult on, working on some music documentaries, and always entertaining this book project that everybody wants me to write.
I'm sure it would be an amazing one. And I just have to say, just from you looking at the 3 Grammys you've won, I feel like reflects this incredibly eclectic catalog of, catalogs really of music that you've had your hands on over the years. Everything from most recently Wilco's, reissue, the 20th anniversary super deluxe edition of Yankee Hotel Foxtrot.
Yeah.
Such a beloved album for so many of us. Then Mr. Rogers, it's such a good feeling, the best of Mr. Rogers. And prior to that, Hank Williams, the Garden Spot, right? In the historical album category. So that's like a whole snapshot of all these amazing, musicians and musical, histories you've touched over these years.
Yeah. I mean, it's Mr. Rogers. I think that was the pandemic year. We
needed some of that energy.
We won online. It was very strange, but it felt like a warm hug, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It's like everybody needed a little Mr. Rogers that year. So
we still do, honestly.
I know.
Please come help. Yeah.
Can we all just calm down and be nice to each other?
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. No, it's been an interesting career. It's, I still feel like I'm the kid answering the phone for my boss, but it's, 30 years down the road, I've worked on, I've had the good fortune to work with so many great artists. And, I got to work with Aretha Franklin. You know, I mean, come on. That's it. You
mentioned, we're going to shout out some of these artists that you have. And you know, I think I read in one of these articles that, you know, you grew up in Milwaukee and saw an ABBA show and snuck away to see it, and your parents didn't know. And it like was that pivotal moment as a musical person that you're like, this is my life. I feel this so deeply.
Yeah.
You know, we each have a different show where it hits us like that.
That show was mind blowing, and it was worth getting in trouble for because, you know, yes, I lied, and yes, I took the bus, and no, I didn't check to see when the buses stopped running. Had to call Dad.
Oh, busted.
Yeah, I was so busted, but you know, it was worth the cone of silence that my dad employed on the way home. So
I love that.
It was.
And how does a kid from Milwaukee get the courage to do this, like, for real? You know, I've had conversations with women in the industry. I'm just always so curious because it's not historically hospitable to women. And, you know, imagine you're familiar with reports like the USC Annenberg Initiative did this inclusion study, and the numbers are pathetic, and especially in the production world. And you're as a producer, I mean, it's like less than 5%, it might be 3% of women in that study. You know, that's the representation of women identified as producers in that study. So, like, first of all, how do you get the courage to enter the field? Then how do you get the courage to stay in it?
Well, you know, I mean, here's the thing. Historically, you know, women were socialized, you know, it's like the books that you saw when you were in grade school, right? Like women are nurses and teachers and mommies and blah, blah, blah. You know, men, boys drive trucks and they do everything else in the world, right? So we weren't really socialized that way. But, you know, by the time I landed on this fabulous earth, you know, things had changed enough. And it was still, you know, when I got in the business, it was still very, very male dominated. And, you know, it wasn't so much courage as it was a matter of knowing when I knew enough to do what I do, right? Like being in the business, I don't know. I think I have a cloak of invisibility that I sometimes can pull over myself, you know, where it's just sort of like, don't mind me. I'm just back here in the studio doing my thing, right? But I also think I communicated with the guys that I worked with pretty well, you know, like I can talk football. I'm from Wisconsin. Come on. You know,
that helps.
So, you know, yeah. And I think, you know, being obsessed with records since I was a kid, I could kind of compete with them. You know, one of the big things of all the older guys that I worked with when I first got in the business, because I was just a baby sprout, you know, off the beer and cheese wagon. And suddenly I'm in Hollywood working at Capitol. But I committed all of this stuff to memory. And one of their favorite things to do was try to like outdo each other. Like, what's the Matrix number on the B side to the single, blah, 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 blah. And I knew that stuff, you know? So, and I am ambitious and I am competitive. And I think that for folks that are compelled to music and are passionate about it, a lot of those older guys that had committed their lives to it, they didn't see the gender thing, right? Now, that having been said, another female friend of mine in the business once said a very insightful thing, and she said, "Well, we'll never know the opportunities that we didn't have, right?" Mm-hmm. So it's just, you know, I can tell you that coming up behind me, there's a lot more women in the business. Yeah. And there are a lot more opportunities in the business these days for women. And you don't just have to be a secretary, you know. Jac Holzman, who was the founder of Elektra Records, said to me once, he's like, "Well, Cheryl, I wish we would have had you back in the day." And I was like, "Jack, man, I would have been a secretary." And he said, "You're right. I'm glad we have you now." You know, but, you know, there were some gentlemen that really were mentors and paved the way for me. And I'm very grateful to them.
That's awesome. Coincidentally, my partner, Tim, just played a show with Adam Holzman, I believe. So
it's great.
The world is very small. Who knows Gregg Bendian? Anyway, I love the connectivity. So it's
so tiny.
So tiny. Yes. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so you started your career kind of more traditionally in labels, and then I believe around 10 or so years ago, co-founded Omnivore Recordings.
Correct.
What, maybe courage isn't the right word, but I'm curious maybe what word you would use. What gave you the courage perhaps, or the idea, the initiative to branch out and do your own thing away from kind of that more traditional path? Because, we talk a lot with women here are looking to make a pivot into something that feels more aligned to them. And I'm curious about kind of what gave you that, that feeling that you wanted to make that jump.
Yeah, did I jump or was I pushed? That's the question, right?
Yeah,
and,
right.
And that's the truth, because what I do in the business, as a producer of historical recordings, the job, there's a handful of jobs left at the labels. So if I wanted to keep doing what I do with the amount of creative agency that I wanted, I had to do it on my own. Mm-hmm. There's just a handful of jobs left, because as the digital world encroached, the idea was, well, everything's available digitally. Why do we need you to go into the vaults and do this work, right? So there were a lot of layoffs, and those jobs didn't come back. And, you're not in the music business if you don't get blown out a few times, right? So you just got to learn not to take that personally. But I also, I got tired of that too. I like to build things, and I don't like starting over. It was useful to work at a bunch of different major labels. It's always important to work in different environments. You learn so much just being in different cultures, right? Labels have different cultures, different companies have different cultures, and that was an important foundation. But I really wanted to keep doing what I do. So I just said, meh, I'll go do it myself. And so that's what we've done. It certainly hasn't been easy, but I've got great partners that all, major label veterans, and we've been able to tightrope our way to 13 years. I think it'll be 14, I guess. Yeah, in January. So
yay,
holy
that's awesome.
moly.
2 of your Grammys were your own releases, right, from Omnivore, right?
Yes.
So 2 of the 3.
Yeah.
Really exciting.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious. You've worked with such an incredible roster of artists and creative people. I'm just curious, do you ever get starstruck? Like, how do you keep your shit together when you're working with Aretha Franklin?
Well,
how does that work?
It used to be hard.
Right?
It used to be really hard, because some people were really intimidating too. Robbie Robertson, who we just recently lost, he was an intimidating guy, but after you spend time with people, they're just, they're people. Every now and again, though, with Robbie, I'd be sitting there and we were working on stuff, and I'd be like, oh my God, this is the guy that wrote, The Wait. It's the guy that wrote Up on Cripple Creek. But, it kind of changed it. Like, I know his kids, they're my age, so everybody's just people at the end of the day. And it took a while.
Franklin, though, talk about gravitas.
Here's the thing, though. Like, we were in a hotel room in New York City, and somebody had sent over, I think Clive Davis had actually sent over a stereo system so we could listen to some music together. And she's padding around in her little stocking feet, and she jumped, like, she moves the rig out, drops to the floor, and starts because it hadn't been wired up. And so and I'm like, oh my God. So we're sitting there on the floor patching this thing together. And, so forget about
that. Is a great story.
Yeah.
And she knew how to plug everything in too, right? That's like a
totally did. Yeah. She's like, oh, well, that goes there. And I'm like, okay.
Even the diva has to know how to plug in her rig.
For sure.
All right, Clinton, you heard, yeah. And I saw you up in a picture with Taylor Swift.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. A little starstruck, maybe.
Again, she was totally cool. So my wife had this necklace on with a bee on it, and Taylor was like, "I love that." And Audrey was like, "Oh, really?" But even Taylor was so cool. We were getting some pictures autographed for our friend's daughter and her friend, there were two sisters, and so we just asked to have the 2 names on one picture, and she said, "Are they sisters?" And Audrey said, "Yeah," and she's like, I need another picture. She was so cool, you know, so just really very conscientious of the potential sister fight that was about to ensue, you know.
Great to hear, like, that people are as cool as you hope they are, you know.
No, she was on it. Yeah.
That's really cool. And you mentioned your wife, Audrey.
Yes.
And I kind of wanted to go into the personal side. We'll talk more about the professional in a minute. But you got it like a 2 rock star household because she is the president of Reed College, great school, right? Badass,
she
right?
is.
And so, like, how do you two juggle? I love how proud you are. Look at that. That's so real.
She's amazing.
I love that. Both of you have these huge careers happening. How does that sort of work? Like, you must be championing each other, you know, all the time.
Yes.
But you're obviously both, I would imagine, very busy people. So tell us about how you kind of support each other. What is that ecosystem like in your marriage and in your life?
Yeah, well, you know, college presidential roles often have the need for their spouse to be involved, right? So if someone's a college president, it's expected that, you know, I come along and go to events. And,
you have to be the arm candy. Come on.
I'm totally the arm candy. Are you kidding me? She's everything. Smarter, funnier, just better in every way.
Oh my gosh. But, you're making me melt over here. No. Look at you. I'm so proud.
It's true. I'm so proud of her. But, you know, she, so, you know, I have a more of a formal role to play. And also, you know, we get a new crop of students every year. Students, you know, there's always a percentage of them that are, you know, into music and want to talk to me about, you know, the business. And I'm always happy to go and be in classes, you know, at the schools if they want me to do that. So that's but I think the big thing is really just being present and part of the school community. Now, Audrey, because she came out of the faculty as a literature professor.
I just have to say that Omnivore Recordings just wrote in the comments, Audrey is a boss.
She is a boss. And she also named the company. She named my label.
I read that.
Yeah.
She came up with the idea Omnivore, which is such a perfect word. Well, Audrey, you rocked it.
She's a literature professor, right? 18th century British literature. And the smartest of my liner note writers that write album notes for our releases, they ask for her to edit the notes. So she's worked on Grammy Award-winning projects as an editor of the liner notes in our projects. So, you know, we just and she's just a lover of music. I mean, one might expect that you would have to be, right, to be hanging around with me. But you know,
I just have to, because I'm being nosy now. How did you guys meet from your two separate worlds?
Oh boy. Okay. Well, I had a cruddy band, and Audrey had a cruddy band. I'm not kidding. Mm-hmm. Not only is Audrey a boss, she's a drummer.
Stop it.
Yeah.
I think we might need a reissue of this band.
No. But
both your bands.
So her band was to be playing the same venue that my band was playing. And she and a bunch of her bandmates came down to check us out, just to check out the room. And she struck up a conversation.
That is the best of the best.
Yeah, so we met
I love that.
through music. Yeah.
Very cool.
So, yeah.
And you veered into production. I was going to ask you, so you veered obviously from playing, I didn't even know you had a band, to being a producer. What kind of, how did you grow those skills of production? Was that sort of like learned on the job kind of thing, or how did you get into production?
Yeah. Well, the thing about my work is it's very interdisciplinary, right? So I'm not in the studio recording artists, right? I'm not an engineer. I employ engineers. I know enough to be dangerous, but I have to know how to write because I have to hire writers. I have to know about graphic design because I work with designers. I have to know how to research, and I have to know clearances, so legal rights. It's a very complex business. So basically, what I need to do for my work is to coordinate everything, right? And the thing I learned in school, we had a television station, and it was the first time that all those skills were put to use, and it kind of locked in for me. Mm-hmm. When I understood, because I was always compelled creatively, but I didn't know how, I thought I was going to go into advertising, mm-hmm. because, and that is a little bit interdisciplinary, right? So it's just, it's not something that you can really be taught. It's something that, I guess the TV thing locked it in because I was producing TV shows. And it was the first time I was like, I'm a producer. I get it now. I have the writers. I have the people running the cameras. I have the story concept, because that's my job, right? I have to come up with the concepts. I have to come up with the through line and the stories. And then I have to know how to guide all of the people that do the component parts. So it was frustrating to not know what that job is, but you feel your way to it. So I have a weird job, so it's not just it's just not technical. I have to know the technical, some of it though.
I know, I love that. I was wondering actually about how you kind of created this multidisciplinary, multi-pronged career for yourself, and it's very liberating to hear that you've, kind of, like we said earlier, you've kind of created these lanes for yourself, and you don't have to box yourself in one of them, which is cool. You have, so that happened, it sounds like almost organically, that you found these things that you love doing, and you can also have kind of a macro role of supervising, and it's very cool. I love that you found, that to be a possibility within the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I almost feel like I'm a librarian in a way. I organize things. It just so happens that the thing I wanted to do when I woke up with every day with my days, the thing I wanted to do was the passion was for music, but then there were all these other little things that I enjoyed doing and skills that I cultivated, and it just so happens that all of those things add up to being a catalog producer. Especially the passion for music and the history of music. So
and I'm just seeing you in front of your library now, it's all kind of gelling and sitting together,
part of it.
I'm sure you're looking at the whole other wall. I love that. I love that you were able to follow your calling, your passion for digging deep into music, being an archivist, helping to produce and pull these things together. I know Jeff Tweedy just gave you a beautiful shout out about kind of having you on the team for Wilco, knowing that he trusts you. So many others trust you with their music to do justice to it.
Yeah, it's a little unnerving sometimes. Can't mess that up.
Handle with care, but you have those caring hands and caring spirit.
But it is, I mean, it's. Sometimes people ask, if that's like a heavy responsibility, and it is. You're really dealing with somebody's art that they've given to people who are passionate about it, right? So you have a responsibility to the audience, and certainly to the legacy of the artist, or the artist if they're still here. I love working with Jeff and the Wilco team because they do, there is a level of trust there, and that's like the greatest compliment of all time.
And he's, having read some of his books, like he's also deep, I'm sure he doesn't hand over that trust lightly.
Yeah,
he's very serious.
He's great. He's a
really person about his craft.
Super smart super smart guy and so talented.
Amazing. Well, I'll ask you for all of you folks who want to learn more about Cheryl, go check her website. There's so many great articles, so much more to talk about. We try to keep these conversations about 30 minutes. So sadly, we're going to wrap up soon, but dig into her amazing background. There's so much there. And I just want to ask you two more questions, Cheryl.
Sure.
One is like, if a woman, is looking to launch into the music industry now, what are some tips you might give to women looking to embark on a career these days?
Don't expect to do the job you think you want to do immediately. It's the music business is churning and changing minute by minute, truly. And the thing about it is, any experience that you get, even if it's tangentially related to the music business, you're going to use that someday. But you certainly, and also the jobs that look the sexiest are usually the worst. They're usually the hardest,
nice.
I always hear, kids will say to me, I want to be a music supervisor because I want to pick the music that goes in movies. And I'm like, that's not the job of a music supervisor. The job of a music supervisor is to clear all that music. So you have to work within a budget. You have the people that pick the music that's not you. Generally. And those jobs, talk about, self-starting jobs. Those are, you're out there on a high wire, just it's entertainment in general. So I would just say, you're not going to walk into a studio tomorrow and be a producer. It's going to take years, right? But if you're smart, you're going to maybe be the person that gets the coffee, or you're going to be the person that winds up at a publicity firm that works with music artists, or a T-shirt manufacturer that works on tour merch. All of that stuff adds up over time. So I would just say, go to where the business is and get as close to it as you can, and just amass as much experience as you can. And the other thing is, you might wind up in a job that you didn't even know existed as a job, right? Because the music business, who knows what the jobs of tomorrow are going to be. So I would just say, jump in and do.
I love it.
And just learn from that.
That's great. And if you need someone to get your coffee, Cheryl, I'll be happy to do it. So just
okay.
Let me know.
I like it about 6:30 in the morning. You'll be over. Gotta get to the gym.
I know. No, that's great advice. I love that. I love that. Keep yourself open to those, unexpected opportunities and
for sure
avenues that might actually take you in the direction you were meant to go. I love that. And we always end our interviews, as you know, with my final question, more broadly, for any woman who's creative and courageous like you and wants to rock it maybe a little more in their lives. What's your one tip to rock it?
Do the work. Just do the work. Be relentless. Work harder than everybody else. Do the work, because you will meet all the people that you need to meet. You will learn all the things you need to learn, but you're not going to do any of that if you just don't do the work.
There's no getting out of that work.
You gotta love it,
Yeah.
Like, what do you want to do with your day, right? Every day that you wake up. Okay. If you want to be a musician, if you want to be a dancer, if you want to be the best secretary, personal assistant, whatever you do, the best dishwasher, but do the work, love the work, and everything else sorts itself out. But just do the work.
Amen. And that's very, very important advice. And honestly, it really comes down so much. I think we had one interview, doing the work is the shortcut. It was Bethany Lyons' quote from season 1 of our podcast. And it's an echoing. Like, doing the work is the shortcut. There's no shortcuts. So shout out to Bethany. It just came to my mind. It's true. Right. Rock stars behind the scenes are doing the damn work.
That's right. 25 hours a day.
Well, Cheryl, Well, thank you for taking the time to share these awesome insights with us. I hope you all enjoyed this as much as I did. And Cheryl, just keep on rocking it as you are and inspiring us.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's just fun.
I appreciate it. Super fun for me too.
All right.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning into the She Rocked It podcast. I'm your host, Karen Gross. This episode has been produced by Tori Marchioni with audio engineering by Tung Chen. The She Rocked It theme song is by Karen Gross and Tim Motzer. Please join us over on Instagram and check out our website at sherockedit.com to join our Rockstar network and check out all the cool things we have going on. Hope to see you soon.